Welcome back to Baha'i on Air. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jane.
And we are diving back into Dr. Peter Kahn's really insightful presentations from back in December 2010.
That's right. This is part 3 of our 4-part deep dive.
And today, we're really zeroing in on his talk, the one titled The Feedback Processes and Spiritual Growth.
Yeah, and like before, we're looking at this from a Baha'i perspective, how these ideas apply to our own lives.
Right, and how they might sort of shape society, too. We'll touch on the purpose of religion, spirituality.
And really dig into the concepts, seeing how the Baha'i writings support what Dr. Kahn was discussing.
Exactly. And just a quick reminder, this is part 3. We've got one more part coming up after this.
Okay, so to get us back into it, remember last time we talked about that core idea, the magnetic principle?
Abdu'l-Bahá's explanation.
Yeah, think of it like actions and attitudes aligned with divine law. They act like a magnet.
Attracting spiritual power.
Precisely. And we mentioned those categories of spirit too: mineral, vegetable, animal, human, and the spirit of faith. Different capacities, sort of.
Right, different levels of reflecting that divine energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the foundation.
Now, for this session, we're adding something really interesting: time.
Okay. Because before, the magnetic principle felt a bit like a snapshot, right? What's happening now?
Exactly, a still photo. But adding time makes it, dynamic, more complex, but also, I think, more relatable to how growth actually feels.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, before we really jump into how time functions in this growth process, it's probably helpful to quickly touch on the Baha'i view of the next world.
Good point. Because it's different.
Very different. Abdu'l-Bahá tells us the kingdom of heaven. It's spiritual. It's like sanctified from our ideas of time and place.
He said being limited to place is a property of bodies, right? Not spirits.
Exactly. Time and place surround our physical bodies, but not our minds, not our spirits.
Which is why we can't really picture it, can we? Abdu'l-Bahá said it's like trying to imagine a color you've never seen. We just don't have the framework here.
Precisely. We can talk about its qualities, sure, but not visualize it in earthly terms.
Okay. So, the next life is beyond time and place.
But here, in this existence, Dr. Kahn points out, we experience time in basically 2 key ways.
2 ways.
Yeah. He calls them recurrent or circular events. Think sunrise, sunset, the days of the week cycling through.
Okay, things that repeat.
Right. And then there are linear or irreversible events, like, a baby growing into an adult. That doesn't repeat.
Got it. Linear progression versus cycles.
And you see both of these reflected in Baha'i life and teachings, actually.
That's true. There are milestones, but also those regular repeating practices.
Yeah. And for this deep dive, we're going to focus mainly on those recurrent, the circular events. Dr. Kahn suggests these are really potent sources for spiritual growth.
The rhythms, the patterns.
Exactly. Think of daily prayer not just as a single act, but as part of a rhythm that shapes you over time.
And when you start looking, these cycles are absolutely everywhere in nature.
Oh, definitely. The sun, the moon, the seasons, that's obvious.
But even smaller, like atoms, or bigger, like comets. Halley's Comet comes back, right?
And even inside us, breathing, heartbeat, sleep cycles.
It's all cycles. It's all rhythms.
And what Dr. Kahn finds fascinating, and I agree, is how the Baha'i faith incorporates these rhythms into its practices. He suggests it helps us kind of synchronize with the world around us.
Aligning ourselves. So what are some examples in the faith?
Well, the most obvious is probably daily obligatory prayer. That's a core recurrent practice.
And reading the writings each day. Reciting the greatest name.
Yes, and also that practice of bringing ourselves to account each day. Reflecting, planning. That's a daily cycle too.
Self-assessment.
And then you have community cycles. The 19-day feast happening every, 19 days.
Right, with its specific devotional, administrative, and social parts.
Observing holy days throughout the year, the fast.
Baha'i elections have a cycle. Community activities often do.
Even those intensive programs of growth, they often have recurrent phases, don't they?
Yeah, cycles of action, reflection, consultation.
And larger things, too. International conferences, pilgrimage, they all fit this pattern of recurrence.
It's woven right in.
And it's not just practices, it's in the philosophy, too. The Kitab-i-Aqdas talks about return, resurrection, concepts with cyclical undertones.
And progressive revelation itself is a cycle, isn't it? God sending messengers periodically.
Absolutely. And the idea of universal cycles, vast stretches of time, it's deeply embedded.
Okay, so we have these recurrent practices. How does that connect back to the magnetic principle?
Well, Dr. Pond's point is that it's the recurrence, the repeated practice that continuously attracts that spiritual power. Praying once is good, but the ongoing rhythm of prayer is where the deeper transformation happens.
It's not a one-shot deal.
Not at all. And to really get how these cycles work for growth, he introduces three really important principles we need to add to the picture.
Okay, principle number one.
Principle one comes from Abdu'l-Bahá, and it sounds simple, but it's huge. Change is a necessary quality and an essential attribute of this world and of time and place.
Change is essential. Sounds straightforward, yeah.
But think about what it implies. Abdu'l-Bahá is saying nothing stays still.
Yeah.
Spiritually, you're either moving forward or you're slipping back. There's no coasting.
No neutral gear.
Exactly. And this really highlights that the Baha'i faith itself is about change, about progress. Look at the Universal House of Justice. Its mandate is to build the world order of Baha'u'lláh. That's inherently a process of change, development, growth.
It's not static. Dr. Khan mentioned his own earlier idea, the Golden Age.
Yeah, he thought it might be this, perfect, unchanging state. But then he realized, reading Shoghi Effendi, that even the Golden Age will be full of creativity, dynamism, ongoing development, still changing, still growing.
Always moving forward. Okay, so change is constant. What's principle two?
Principle two is a big one, and quite different from how the world often operates. The Baha'i faith places its primary value on effort rather than achievement.
Effort over achievement. Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, think about the secular world. If you need, say, a plumber, Dr. Khan uses this example. You look for the one with the best results, right? The proven track record of fixing things.
Yeah, you want achievement. You want the leak stopped.
Of course. And our education, careers, it's often about measuring and rewarding what you've achieved. But spiritually, the emphasis shifts.
How so?
Shoghi Effendi talks about the power of striving. Just the act of trying, of making an effort to serve, even if we feel totally inadequate, that act itself attracts divine help.
So the effort itself is key.
Yes. He says the harder we strive, the greater the confirmations from Baha'u'lláh. The spiritual power we attract is proportional to the effort we put in, not necessarily how spiritually accomplished we already are.
Wow, that has big implications.
Huge. For one, like Dr. Khan says, it means we really can't judge each other spiritually. How can you possibly know the internal effort someone else is making?
Right. His example of avoiding alcohol.
Yeah.
Easy for one person, immense effort for another.
Exactly. We just see the outward action, not the inner struggle. That's why I think the House of Justice puts so much emphasis on encouragement in the community, supporting the effort.
And it also means, well, it means there's always hope, doesn't it? No one is too far gone.
Absolutely. Even someone who feels completely worthless because of past actions. Dr. Khan even uses the example of someone with a violent past. Through sincere effort, they can attract spiritual power and change.
That's powerful.
And the flip side is true, too. No one is so spiritually advanced that they can stop making an effort.
Complacency is a danger.
It is. The Guardian observed people who served heroically, but then, maybe through a sense of superiority, stopped striving and, well, faltered. Effort is always needed.
And just starting is important, too. Abdu'l-Bahá at the Temple Foundation.
You have only to begin. Yeah. That initial step, that first bit of effort, can kickstart the whole process.
How does that work? Like a cycle?
Exactly. Yeah. A little effort attracts some spiritual power. That gives you a bit more strength, so you can make a bigger effort, which attracts more power. It's a positive feedback loop, an upward spiral.
Effort leading to strength, leading to more effort.
Okay.
That sounds great. Almost too simple.
Well, yeah. Because as Dr. Khan points out, if that was a whole story, we'd all likely be spiritual giants by now, wouldn't we?
Good point. So what's missing?
The third crucial element, tests, challenges, difficulties.
The tests.
Right. They're not just random roadblocks. The Baha'i writings see them as integral, even essential for growth.
Baha'u'lláh and the hidden words. If adversity befall thee not in my path.
How canst thou walk in the ways of them that are content with my pleasure?
Exactly. Hardship is part of the path.
And the Guardian wrote about learning from failures, from trials. They purify us. They do. They strengthen our character, help us rise to higher levels of service if we strive to overcome them.
So the picture gets more complex now.
It does. It's make an effort, encounter tests, strive to overcome the tests, persevere, attract spiritual power, gain strength, make greater effort, maybe attract bigger tests, and the cycle continues.
Effort, test, overcome, strengthen, repeat.
Something like that. And it helps understand what Baha'is mean by tests or even Satan.
It's not an external evil force pulling strings.
No. Usually it refers to our own lower nature, our ego, our material desires, the impulses that pull us away from our spiritual path.
And Abdu'l-Bahá had that really interesting insight about how tests appear.
Oh, yeah, that Satan appears in the dress we find most attractive, meaning tests are often tailored to us, our specific weaknesses, our history, our attachments.
Dr. Khan's examples were very helpful there, like parental approval for marriage being a test for someone with difficult parent relationships.
Or the male membership of the House of Justice being a point of difficulty for someone sensitive to gender discrimination.
Or even the concept of infallibility being tough for someone coming from a background where that was misused.
Exactly. They hit us where we're vulnerable or where we have unresolved issues or strongly held perspectives that conflict with the teaching.
So tests aren't trivial things. They can be deep.
They can be, and they manifest in lots of ways. Simple distraction, procrastination, rationalizing why we don't need to do something.
Peer pressure, fear of what others think.
Materialism getting in the way, frustration when things don't change fast enough, even resenting disciplines like the fast. It's all potential tests.
Okay, so spiritual growth isn't smooth. It's this dynamic interplay. Effort, tests, striving, getting stronger.
That's the picture Dr. Khan paints. It's complex, but also, I think, more realistic and hopeful.
He then connects this individual cycle to the growth of the faith itself, using that passage from The Guardian.
Yes, that powerful passage about hostility actually leading to an outpouring of grace.
Which sustains the believers, sparks growth.
Which then provokes more hostility.
Leading to a greater revelation of divine power, enabling bigger victories.
Generating new challenges and stronger enemies, but ultimately resulting in a more glorious unfoldment of the faith's power.
Wow. It's dense, but breaking it down, you see that same cycle. Challenge, response, reinforcement, growth, new challenge.
Exactly. The Guardian calls it a series of rhythmic pulsations, growth driven by the interplay of opposition and divine power. It's not linear.
Not a steady march.
No. And Dr. Khan's key insight here is that the same pattern applies to us as individuals. Our spiritual growth also happens in fits and starts in these rhythmic pulsations.
Through that cycle of effort, tests, overcoming, and reward.
Yes. And perseverance through the tough parts, through the tests, is what leads to the real development. That's the engine of growth.
He ends with that beautiful story from Memorials of the Faithful. Abdu'l-Bahá on the roof.
In Akka, yeah. Perceiving the spiritual light of Haji Mirza Aidar Ali coming from Haifa, even when he was just a speck on the horizon.
And the description of the Haji when he arrived, radiant joy, absolute certainty.
It's an incredible image of what that spiritual development can look like. That luminosity, that assurance, that's what we're striving for through these processes.
So, wrapping up this part, key takeaways are the importance of those recurrent practices, the rhythm.
And those core principles. Change is constant. Effort matters more than achievement.
And tests are essential, not accidental. They're part of the design for growth.
And seeing spiritual development, both for us and the faith, as this dynamic, cyclical process. Effort, challenge, overcoming, reinforcement.
It gives you a framework, doesn't it, for understanding the ups and downs, why sometimes things feel hard, and why perseverance leads to breakthroughs.
Definitely. So maybe something to reflect on is, where do you see these feedback loops in your own life? The cycles, the efforts, the tests. How does this model resonate with your experience?
Good prompt. And folks should definitely join us for our final part 4, where we'll build on all of this.
Looking forward to it. Thanks everyone for tuning into this part of our deep dive into Dr. Khan's insights.